cannibal killer who was known as the Berlin Butcher, or also known as Jack the Slaughter. Make no mistake about it, this murderer was more than just a simple cannibal. There was also a perverted fetish behind each of the killings. Let us find out together. This channel is about lesser known serial killers. If you're interested, I upload new content every Tuesday and Thursday. Well, if you're ready, let's get started. (1863) in the country of Germany, in the city of Neuprint, Karl Goberman was born. No youth or family dynamic was provided, but as a teen, he was alleged to have had a sadistic appetite for sex. As a young adult, he started off by forcibly fondling a 10-year-old girl. There was no information surrounding the circumstances, but he was initially able to get away from being held accountable. It wasn't until a second, more brutal crime took place was when the authorities decided it was time to put a temporary end to his reign of terror. The second offense that got their attention was when he somehow kidnapped a 4-year-old girl from her parents. The girl was taken to an isolated location where he was able to have his way with her. Inflicting pain to small children was like an aphrodisiac to him. He was alleged to have had libido problems, so torture aided in his arousal. What he did to this young girl is what prisoners execute other prisoners for who commit similar crimes. Karl savagely, repeatedly, and forcibly assaulted this 4-year-old girl until her internal organs were destroyed. He didn't stop until her fragile little body was near the brink of death. Fortunately, the girl survived and was able to point out her attacker and see Karl be sentenced to 15 years in prison for both assaults. Sadly, and immediately after Karl's court sentencing, the poor child died from severe internal injuries alleged to have been stemming from the assault. This prevented Karl from being given a murder charge. Years later, after being released from prison, Karl chose to run away from his past by moving to Berlin. 1918 was the start of World War I. During this time, many men were being drafted into war, so many women were being left at home with their children and being reliant upon their husband's military pay as support. The money that was being sent to the wives was typically mailed and took a much longer time to get to the families in need. Most mail was delivered by horse or train at the time, which took an extremely long time to deliver. Families were forced to stretch their money in order to make it to the next payday. This caused many women to purchase everything based on discounts along with items being stolen. Karl chose to open a butcher shop in the city of Berlin. The meats that he sold were extremely reasonably priced. Also, during times of war, meat was confiscated by the government, causing massive shortages. Women would come from far and near to purchase Karl's meats. When he was asked by his curious customers how he was able to keep his meat supply so steady and reasonably priced, Karl would always respond in a cryptic manner. In most cases, he would acknowledge that it was a secret, but he was unable to divulge, or he would lose his supplier. For his extremely curious customers that were relentless on finding out how he was able to keep a steady supply of various meats in his shop, he would give a more solid answer. He told these people that he purchased his meat on the black market, and for that reason, he was unable to divulge any information. In each case of the curious customers, he would reassure them that everything was kosher and there was nothing to be concerned about in regards to the quality of his merchandise. Karl had charisma and was able to win most people's trust over. For years, women began to disappear from the city. Most of the women that vanished were poor widows whose husbands died in war, so the wives became forgotten and homeless. Body parts were being found discarded throughout the city of Berlin for years, and all of which were from females. Each part that was found wasn't just cut off, but the parts were also mutilated. Every female extremity or torso was found to have been missing large chunks of human flesh. The police had no witnesses or leads, partially due to the lack of experienced detectives working because most able-bodied men were forcibly inducted into the military. 3 years later, the neighbors of a tenant contacted the police because they heard a woman's ear-shattering screams coming from inside of a next-door apartment. When the screams stopped, the tenants knocked on the door but got no response. The authorities responded and knocked on the door several times. After no answer, the police went from knocking to now trying to break the door down. The authorities realized that it had been barricaded from the inside, but eventually they were able to forcibly break in. As they entered in one of the bedrooms, a woman was found recently murdered laying across the bed. Before the police arrived, the killer had escaped out the window. The apartment was owned to Carl Groberman. Sometime later, he was eventually arrested and taken into custody. It was at that point the neighbors came forward and informed the police that women were seen on dozens of occasions entering into the apartment and never being seen alive again. Carl confessed to murdering between 25 and 50 women. The police believed that he could have been responsible for as many as 100 murdered women and girls throughout the years. The authorities also believe that Carl murdered these women and cannibalized some of them. It's also believed that he sold some of the human meat to customers at his butcher shop. Before Carl could be held accountable for his crimes, he committed suicide in his cell by hanging himself. If you enjoy more stories about lesser-known killers spanning centuries and countries, this is the channel for you. Click all notifications. I upload new content every Tuesday and Thursday. God bless and stay safe.